What up, perfume people? Welcome to another episode of Making Sense Makes Sense, the podcast that's all about demystifying the beautifully complex world of fragrance in a way that is fun, accessible, and not full of crap, basically. I am Tommy D, your olfactory MC, and I'm here to guide you through yet another interesting conversation about scent with a fascinating person. Today's episode is a bit of a family affair. I speak with Alexandra Roos, co-founder of Roos Roos. Alexandra founded the brand with her mother, Chantal Roos, who worked in the industry for many years, creating fragrances with brands like YSL, Issey, Miyake, and Gaultier, and Tom Ford. I could go on. And she was famously instrumental in the development of Opium back in 1977. Alexandra obviously grew up in that fragrant context, but she trained as a musician. She's a singer, guitarist, and indie rock composer with 4 albums under her belt. Together, they've created a unique fragrance brand, bringing together Chantal's fragrance development experience and Alexandra's musicality and entrepreneurial character to forge something really quite beautiful. Their fragrances are distinct and often have a musical reference point, which I absolutely love because I think there's such a strong overlap between scent and sound. And this is something I explore quite often on my Instagram in my series called Scent Sounds, which is where I pair my favorite albums with fragrances to capture their olfactory vibe. So I love that whole exploration of music and scent. I think it's really interesting. Alexandra and I have a great chat about scent, music, and much more. But before I get into all of that, I want to talk to you about one of the Roos Roos fragrances. In the episode, you'll hear that Alexandra and I talk about their latest launch, Les Larmes de Tiresias, the Tears of Tiresias, which is based on the Greek mythology of Tiresias, who disturbs 2 snakes mid-sexy time, resulting in him being changed into a woman for 7 years before again fiddling with some frisky snakes and being changed back to a man. The moral of that story being something to do with not touching snakes without consent, I imagine. Anyway, I've been wearing this fragrance over the last few days and I'm entirely obsessed with it. Firstly, I think the story is such a fascinating one and it explores the concept of gender in scent in a new way. Rather than simply saying this is genderless or unisex, it's saying here's an olfactory tale about the duality of gender. I think that's pretty cool. It's a different way of doing it. But it's the scent itself that I love. It opens with this wonderful shimmering drop of frankincense, which evokes the tears in the name through tears of frankincense. Then it's wrapped in this warm lactonic milk accord, which has a delightful touch of sourness to it. Then it has a hint of fig with a flash of greenery and some pulpy, milky fleshiness before dissolving into a soft blend of woods and cashmere. It's just so comforting and so unique. And I think out of all of the Roos Roos fragrances I've tried, I think it's definitely my favourite. I see that gender split in it too, that maternal milkiness and the solid masculine qualities of the wood. It's a perfume that says that there are those facets of the masculine and the feminine existing in all of us. It's beautifully executed and I think you should get your nose on it as soon as possible. You should listen to me. Well, you are listening to me, but you should listen to me in the sense that do as I say. Anyway, this is not a paid or sponsored mention by the brand, by the way. I've just been really enjoying the fragrance, having spoken about it with Alexandra, and I thought I would share that with you. Anyway, shall we get to the interview? Okay, let's do that. But very quickly, here's a quick word from our sponsors. This episode of Making Sense Makes Sense is sponsored by Carium. Did you know that smell is the only one of our senses that doesn't have a specific language? This means that to talk about the smells we experience, we have to borrow from our other senses, relying on the language of texture, colour, sound, taste, and emotion to describe what our noses experience. Carium's innovative AI technology puts language at the centre of the user experience. Using a large language model built with vast amounts of textual data, it maps how scents are described in language, coupling this with the customer's own word associations to guide them to unexpected fragrance matches. It's not just about AI, it's about immersive storytelling through scent, allowing customers to see, smell, and feel fragrances in a way that connects to their memories and emotions. The scent sommelier uses language to deliver a precise personal recommendation that feels both scientific and emotional in 3 easy steps. Firstly, customers select the type of fragrance they're searching for from a choice of up to 16, either from a single brand or multiple brands. They then tap through a series of scent and word cues, and with each tap, AI adapts. And finally, the scent sommelier identifies their signature fragrance, all whilst the customer smells along in an interactive experience. Carium's The Scent Sommelier launched in the UK this summer and can be found in Selfridges on Oxford Street as part of the Famine counter, and also at the Richmond fragrance boutique Parfums La Danse. So why not pop in and see how the language of scent and Carium's innovative AI solution can guide you to discover a new fragrant love. Alexandra, thanks so much for joining me on Making Sense Make Sense. As I was saying to you a little bit earlier, I've been following you and your brand for a little while now, and we've never had the chance to meet. So it's really exciting to meet you and have a nice chat all about fragrance.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I am very, very happy.
So you co-founded this brand with your mother, who, you know, has worked with brands like YSL and Jean Paul Gaultier and Issey Miyake. So obviously perfume was a huge part of her life. But what I'm really curious about is, how important was perfume to you growing up?
Very, very important, because that I always say that I have the feeling that I'm born in an opium bottle, because she launched it. I was quite young, and I've always seen my mom surrounded by a lab sample, you know, coming home and everything. So opium has been a big, big, big thing for me, even though I don't really know if I make a fantasy of it, because it was quite a strong fragrances, but later on, and still today, I mean, it has been a fragrance that I will always remember, like the perfume of my childhood.
So perfume was obviously ever present in your life. I mean, how could it not be with your mum working on such big projects? Do you have a particular fragrance that, you know, more personally, that you have a connection with, that was like your first fragrance, the first one that maybe you chose, that you went to buy?
Yeah, so like all teenagers, I remember having Mûre Musc from L'Artisan Parfumeur, which was like my real first choice. And also it was niche. So that was really the first real fragrance that I had. And then later on, it has been Carnal Flower by Frederic Malle.
Wow, two real polar opposites there. So always very niche in taste.
Yeah.
But, you know, you've gone from something very fruity and slightly green to intensity of the headiest,
to a tuberose.
The headiest tuberose there is on the planet. I love that. That's duality right there. And what people may not know about you is you actually trained as a musician. And, you know, for me, there's such a strong overlap between scent and music, not in only how they're composed, but in how we react so emotionally to both. Do you find that your background in music gives you a unique approach to making fragrance?
I would not say unique, but I would say like composing music. It's like composing perfume. It's like a creative act. But in fragrance, I'm not the composer myself. I'm more like a conductor, because you have to work. Unfortunately, I'm not a perfumer myself. So you have to work with perfumer and just to drive them, you know. So the creative part is more before, when you create the story, what story you want to tell, and also for the packaging and everything. So it's quite different, but still it's a creative act, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that role of creative director or artistic director in fragrance is so underrated. You know, perfumers are fantastic. We talk a lot about perfumers, but actually being the person that comes up with a concept and then has to try and drive that is a real unique set of skills, I think.
Yes, and to be really honest and to give back to César what I should give, it's that my mom trained me for that. I mean, really, because I had no clue. It's not really easy to discuss with the perfumer to be sure we have the same vocabulary, that we understand each other. And the big thing she told me was, don't talk about ingredients. Don't say, oh, more vanilla, more this, more that, because you'll see it's such an architecture that, because she did that in the past, and maybe she has said, I don't know, maybe there's too much patchouli, and then he takes out the patchouli and everything falls apart. So she said, just focus on your story, just focus on the emotion, just focus on something that you can feel and that you can discuss, because it's going to be complicated for you to go with the ingredient conversation. So she really trained me hard on that. And when we started, I was really looking at her and listening for what the dialogue she had with the perfumer, because I think it was her strongest skill.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's I think a common misconception that people will think that you will be stood there directing in terms of materials, but actually you're probably talking more about the effect that you want or the texture that you want or that those kind
Exactly.
of synesthesia feels of it, linking
Exactly.
it to other things. Because as you say, if you say remove this or it's too much of that, it could all just fall
Yeah.
apart.
I mean, it's just like talking to a cook and saying, maybe take out a bit of salt, and then it's not the salt. You just misunderstands everything. So, as I'm not a perfumer, even though I had a little training with a perfumer to understand some stuff, but when you're not a perfumer, you should not. You should stay where you are and be close to your story.
Yeah. And that's where the challenge comes in, really, isn't it? Because it's about finding that common language with the perfumer so that when you
Mm,
say, oh, it's too smooth or it's too rough, they know
mm.
what you mean by that and they can then translate that into a formula change.
Yeah, exactly. And you have to be sure. It depends also with the connection you have with the
Mm.
perfumer. Because you might say to someone it's too smooth, and they might say, what do you mean? So that's why it's a very long work, to develop a fragrance. Takes you a year and a half, sometime more, because the approach, and it really, really depends on the link you have with the perfumer and how you understand each other. This is the most important thing I've learned with my mother.
Yeah, it's that building that relationship so you have informed that common language. You talk about the time it takes to make these things. I know that you've also released 4 albums of music, and I just
Mhm.
wonder because you're so creative. Obviously, you have these two very similar but very different creative endeavors in terms of making albums, making music, and making fragrance. Do you see those end products in a similar way, or are they very different spaces to you? You've got your albums and your perfumes. Are they not existing in the same way in your mind?
They're existing in the same body.
Mm.
So I guess that when you are creative somewhere, you bring the same creative sense everywhere. But once again, as you work with a perfumer and that you really have, it's not that I did not work with musicians, but I was the one creating the music and the sound. So it was a bit different. It's not exactly the same, I have to say, because there's the fragrance to develop, but then there is the journey of being an entrepreneur, which is another
Yeah.
another part of the business,
Yeah.
and that I did not had in music. So it's I think when you're creative, everybody who's creative, you'll find it in the way they cook, in the way they dress, in the
Mm.
way they play music or create fragrances, but it's not exactly the same journey, let's
Yeah.
say.
Yeah, it's creative people find many different outlets, don't they? I suppose, and you say
Mm,
that's interesting. You say about it's very multi-layered that you've got this additional layer on top of it's running a business, it's making it commercial, and all of the
mm,
supply
mm.
chain and all of that stuff that gets on top of that, which is, I'm sure, a whole world of fun at times.
Yeah, I mean, actually, it can be fun, not every day, but it's always nice to learn new
Mm,
things, you know? Well,
yeah.
I'm happy. I'm happy of the journey until now.
Absolutely. So I'm really intrigued by where the idea came for this brand and whether that happened just really organically for you or whether it's something you talked about for a long time with your mother to say at some point we're going to do this. How did that come about?
So it's been a very long time that I was really looking on fragrances, but my mom was not in the niche field. So when I told her, it could be possible actually to have our own brand. And she said, no, it's not. I say, yes, it is. I mean, just look at what's going on. We could really begin a sort of small brand. And this is what we did, because when she stopped her work at YSL, I told her maybe it's the time now that we should think of it. And here we are.
And how do you approach that fragrance development for the brand? Because you've got a very distinct, I think, vision for the brand, and each of the concepts feels very well thought out and clear. So where do those ideas come from, and what roles do you both take in terms of taking things, through that journey of creation?
Once again, she teaches me that there's no way we can make a good fragrance without a story. So I was thinking of, as I'm coming from music, I said, what about trying to link really music and perfume? So having those names such as Sympathy for the Sun, or that coming obviously for Sympathy for the Devil, and then bringing the story of the Rolling Stone when they went to the south of France. So Then after, even in the name, the promise is in it. When we discuss with Fabrice Pellegrin, who's coming from the South, actually, it makes it easier. So then there is a story and there is a name that can give him something. Same for like White Ballad. So White Ballad, all those things, it really comes from the name and the story.
Yeah, that's always the starting point, and it's really, really clear with the brand about that sort of musical representation that comes out. It feels like a very harmonious representation of both of you, because there's obviously your mother and her background in the industry, crafting very bold, these blockbuster scents, but there's also this thread of musicality that runs through them, and you've talked a few there about White Ballad, and there's perfumes named after songs like Pale Blue Eyes. Was that really intentional for you to represent both of you in that way, or did that just happen very naturally?
I would say that we both came with our strengths. And so I came with my music background. And so we just merged it without really knowing it. The only thing that was really important is that Roos and Roos is a family story, mother and daughter, transmission of the know-how. And every time we launch a fragrance, we try to have a story with it. Because it's better to discuss with the perfumer trying to tell a story together. Then we are not, and that's great. I told you I was wearing Mûr and Musk. I love the idea of having ingredient fragrances, and we do have some. For example, if you look at Oud Vibration, of course there's oud because it's in the name, but still Oud Vibration is coming from good vibration, so I'm always trying to bring music or any sort of art in it, because this is how I like it.
It makes it more authentic that way, I think, and it resonates with people because there's a richness to that if you've got that storytelling there, something that there's touch points for people to resonate with, I think.
I hope so, because that's important at the end, that people understand you. Yeah. Understand the fragrance. Yeah.
And a couple of points you've sort of talked about what your mum has taught you and what you've learned from her throughout this. But I wonder, sort of on the inverse of that, what do you think she's learned from you, through working together and through creating this brand?
So she's learned from me that I was so new in the business that I had more freedom, because when you don't know something, you have more freedom. So that's what I brought to her, a new perspective. I also brought the niche world to her, because even though when I consider Issey Miyake, back in the time, it was sort of niche because no one knew Issey Miyake. And the path they took, the distribution was more niche than selective. But so I brought her all that new world and maybe freedom. And also I'm the one who cycles. I mean, she had such a high position that she was not really into the day-to-day work anymore. So I am the one who really is in the day-to-day work.
Oh, okay. So you're the one that's doing a lot of the background stuff of it, the business side and getting it moving. Yeah. Okay. Interesting. And actually, I'd never thought about it that way, that actually being so new to the industry, that I suppose you're right. It gives you that ability to question why with things, doesn't it? And say, well, why do it that way? Why can't we do it in an entirely new way? And I imagine that's quite an exciting challenge for someone who's been so embedded in the industry for so long.
Yeah, it has been also, I mean, we had some arguments, of course, because already mother and daughter, and then being partner. I mean, that was really, really very funny, because sometimes she said it herself. She had those abuse of power, on two levels. She's my mom, and she was a sort of perfumery diva, or whatever. So it was very sometimes complicated, but it went okay. I mean, we had a very good time, actually.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it's difficult if she says, well, you have to do that because I'm your mother, you have to listen to me.
Yeah. And I know it because I am the one who was in the business. And I said, yeah, but I mean, but she's open, she's open-minded. Otherwise, she would have never done that. And I really find she was very brave in a way after the career she had to read you a small brand, and it's not easy every day, and so, I mean, we had a lot of fun.
There is a sense of, I suppose, pioneering with this in terms of you both coming into this, obviously having her having such a bold fragrance and being such a pioneer in the industry, but also from what you're saying around your kind of early adoption of niche, and also being someone outside of the industry and coming in and trying to shake it up a little bit. Do you think that's part of your ethos, is around sort of being pioneers and trying to shake things up a little bit?
I don't think I'm a real pioneer, but I was just new, so that's when you don't really know something, it's more easy to shake it, because
Yeah.
you don't really know the rules. There's not that heaviness
Yeah.
of tradition or whatever, and it's the same for me in music, if I discuss with someone younger, and you might say, no, don't do like that, don't treat your voice like that, it's not, because the world evolves, and
Yeah.
I don't want to say that only young people can understand the evolution, but I think it's always nice to mix the competence, you would say, like that, like what's like, you can have someone very young with someone very old. I mean, it's the harmonization, the mix of everything that I think is always really fruitful.
It's that balance of that competence and experience, and also that
Exactly.
naivety in a way, I think, that makes
Mm.
for fruitful creativity.
Yeah, I agree.
I wanted to talk about your latest launch because it's got a really intriguing concept behind it. So
Yeah.
the name in English, because my French is terrible, so I won't try and insult you by trying. But it's named, in English translation, is The Tears of Tiresias, which is it's based on the myth of Tiresias, a man who transformed into a woman for 7 years and then came back and turned back into a
Exactly.
man. So you're trying to create something that contains both the feminine and the masculine. Where did that idea come from, and how did you approach that balance of translating feminine and masculine in an olfactory form?
Well, in fact, I was at home with a very good friend of mine who's a poet and really a sort of philosopher. And we had that discussion about gender because it's like really actual. And it just talked to me about that myth that I had no clue, I have to be honest, of Tiresias. And then slowly discussing, and we came out with the idea that tears could be the metaphor for perfume and blah, blah, blah. And then finally, we arrived with that story. And so I went to see Alexandra Carlin because it's been a while we wanted to work together. And I have to say that when I told her the name, she looked at me like, Les larmes de Tiresias, Tiresias tears. All right, all right. And so that's when we understand that the connection and the story that you have to tell for the perfumer to be able to translate it into a perfume was really important. And Alexandra Carlin, I have to say, has been incredible. I mean, she has made so many research. I mean, that was insane. So she found out that Tiresias, when he was a woman, had a child. So she was thinking, and there's a very famous play called Tiresia's breast. And so she was thinking maybe we could do a milky accord, and tears of the trees. It's the incense, and slowly, and then because Tiresias, when he found those two snakes copulating in the forest, he touched them, and that's when he got transformed into a woman. And then 7 years later, found them back, and then got back into a man. So there's that story about sexuality, a bit of. So she thought of a defended fruit, which was the fig, and slowly we made that fragrance together. I mean, she created it, but this is really the perfect example of how, from a story, you can arrive to a fragrance that it was a great work. And it was great because it was Alexandra. I don't know if it would have been so nice with someone else. I have no idea. But with Alexandra, it was a great process.
I think it's just such a rich story, and from what my exposure to perfumers is, they just love a challenge sometimes, don't they? They're all quite nerdy, and they love if you can give them such a rich story, and they can pull so
Yeah.
many elements from it. How did you know that Alexandra was the one that you wanted to work with on that particular perfume?
Because it's been very long that we always meet each other in some different places, and we were always saying, oh, let's work together. And then we met, and I was thinking, Les larmes de Tiresias is not that easy story to tell. So I called her and I said, can we meet? And I explained her the story. And Alexandra, before she trained at the perfumer, she was into, I don't know how to say that in English, French. I mean, when you just learn literature. And so she was really keen on, a bit nerdy, I have to say. And so just the way we discussed after an hour, it went so deep. And I thought, okay, that's her. I mean, she really wants to do it, and she understood it. And the next day, she bought me books about Tiresias. So I know a lot about Tiresias now, thanks to her.
Good, good. That's good because we're going to move now into a 1 hour lecture about Tiresias. If you could just take over for me.
And Tiresias is such an incredible myth, because
Hmm.
my part with snakes is a small part. There's so many things. The guy went blind. I mean, so many stories about Tiresias. And so at the end, Alexandra really made a great work of research. And then she worked on it. And it was a very nice time we had together.
But it comes back to that idea of, where I think that you are both pioneering in a way is because we talk a lot about gender neutral fragrances. And, you coming from your background of loving niche fragrance, you will know, I'm sure, that really when it comes to fragrance, there is no gender. It's a marketing thing that's kind of outdated now. But we see a lot of gender neutral fragrances, and there is no story behind that specifically, and there doesn't always need to be. It's just this is gender neutral. What I like about this is you've taken the idea of androgyny, gender neutrality, and kind of the balance of masculine and feminine, and you've made a story out of it, or you're telling a story out of it, and that it's such an unusual way to approach that, because then it becomes richer and more intriguing, I think, for people to experience it that way.
Yeah, I agree with you because I never liked the idea of unisex. I mean, it means nothing. And so when we discussed that with Alexandra, she said, yeah, because a big floral fragrance bouquet could be totally used by a man, or a woody fragrance could be used by a woman. So we said to her, it's not really a unisex fragrance we want to do. We want to do something that could contain both feminine and masculine. So anybody could wear it, and there is no ingredient that anybody would say, that's feminine. And you're totally right. This is absolute marketing.
And when you think about it, what's so fascinating, if you think about all of those big fragrances of the 70s and 80s, things like Opium and Cocoa, which are, they were feminine in inverted commas, fragrances. But those are the kind of fragrances that men are wearing now, those big, large, spicy, woody compositions. So it's all very cyclical, tastes and things change. So actually, you should just wear what you like. But I thought what really stood out for me was that this was a really interesting way to approach gender in fragrance. And I think that's...
Oh, thank you. I'm very happy you liked it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But it has evolved a lot, and I think Middle East men have helped that a lot. I don't think they have a problem with their masculinity or something, I mean, they love rose, they put rose, they love whatever, And so then slowly, thanks to niche, I have to say, it has opened a wider range of fragrance for men and for women.
Yeah, because it's just removed that as a label, hasn't it? It's not even saying a lot of the time gender neutral. It's just saying here's the fragrance,
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
So we talked a little bit how you worked with Alexandra on this project, and obviously that seemed to have come about quite organically. With the other perfumers, because I know you've worked with Fabrice Pellegrin quite a lot, Dominique Ropion. How are you picking each one for each project? Is it different each time? And when you get to sort of briefing them, what does that look like?
At the beginning of our story, of our brand, my mother, who's someone really loyal, she had worked with Firmenich a lot. So we went to Firmenich and we tried different perfumers. And we had a really nice connection with Fabrice Pellegrin, who is not only a great perfumer, but a great human being. And every story we told him, because he made most of our fragrances, we were so happy with him that we did not really see the point of changing perfumer. And because as I really love the Dominique Ropion for so many fragrances he created, and particularly Carnal Flower that I've been wearing for years, and that I still do sometimes, I wanted to work with him. So I just called him, and Dominique is the kindest man on earth. I mean, very easy to work with, very humble, unbelievable perfumer. So we begin to work with him, and it's not... I don't know how it happened. I mean, we made one fragrances, and then we made a second one called Malamata, for which we have had a Fifi award, because it was during the COVID and everybody was stuck, and I was surrounded by nettle, and I really thought that the company is going to be dead, because and then I thought, okay, I don't care, I'm going to do a brand around the nettle, because I eat nettle, and then I say I'm going to do whatever. I had an idea, so I called Dominique and I say, are you bored? As I am. And he said yes. I said, would you do me a nettle fragrance? Yeah, of course. And that's how it happened. So it depends. And then also we worked with Nicolas Bonneville at Firmenich. I don't know how it happens. It just happens, And then Alexandra, because we met so many times, and I was thinking for Les Larmes de Tiresias, and I don't know, I felt confident with her, with the discussions we had. And I don't know. I'm not so sure we need to keep expanding, the list of perfume. I really would like to work again with Fabrice, to be honest. So I don't know.
It just sounds like it feels really organic.
I don't know exactly how it happens.
Yeah. And it seems natural.
Very
it seems
organic.
It's just, you think, it comes from a conversation, it comes from a thought, and it just, the perfume seems to be placed with the person that it needed to be placed with, where it should end up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's really organic.
Yeah. And out of everything you've created for Roos Roos, what would you say is the one that probably holds the most significance for you? Whether it's the one that you're most proud of, or the one that probably was the most annoying to come up with and you're glad it got over the line in the end. Is there one that sticks out?
It's not easy. It's like choosing a child, So, but my mom always says, "Oh, I don't have a favorite one," which I'm sure it's true. But me, if I would choose like 3 fragrances in Roos Roos that would give a panel of what we can do in fragrance, it would be Menta Religiosa, because we also had a Fichet Award for that. And even though I think it's a masterpiece from Fabrice Pellegrin, it is not a bestseller. It sells well in Italy, but it's not a bestseller. And I don't understand that, because for me, it's an incredible fragrance. I love White Ballad a lot. That has been also done by Fabrice Pellegrin. Les Larmes de Tiresias, I would say, is very different in our portfolio. I mean, we just it's very different, and I really like it. And Malamata, I would name those 4, because Malamata is very green. White Ballad is that very oriental floral fragrance. Menta Religiosa more aromatic and woody. And Les Larmes de Tiresias is milky woody. Yeah, I would name those 4 ones.
Yeah, that's a good cross-section of kind of showing what you can do. Would you say those are, for someone who's never tried the brand before, would those be the ones you'd recommend them to go to first, or?
It depends of what you like and who you are. Maybe those are the most have a big personality. So I'm not so sure. It might be easier to begin with a cappella or Nymphécence in our portfolio. It depends who you are, what you're looking for, what do you know about perfume? Because you have to learn. I mean, it's like music. You can't go to a contemporary composition like that. You would not like it. I mean, you have to be to train yourself in a way, I think, to be able to like some fragrances that are have more personalities.
There's a whole range of things. If you like big bold things, there's some for you, or if you want something a little bit more accessible, there's mixture. Yeah. And when I was sort of looking through the brand when I was preparing for this interview, one of the things that really stood out to me was your commitment to donating 10% of your profits to the Fondation de Femmes, which defends women's rights in France. Why was that so important to you?
So it's 10% on the online sales.
On the online sales, yeah.
Yeah, it's very important because we are very gifted, my mother and I. It's a sort of duty to give to others that have less chance than me. And I knew very well a lady who was involved at La Fondation des Femmes. And I just understood and experienced that perfume can really bring a lot of happiness. It can immediately transport you in a wide range of emotions, and very intense, very vivid, So we understood that when we gave away fragrances to women in need, and they were so happy. It made them make them feel so well. We also helped them raising money for galas, because my mother knows a lot of people in the cosmetic field. So I just think it was sort of duty, but I like it at the same time. To be able to give back something.
Yeah. And I think there's something really important there that you've identified, which is that fragrance can really bring joy to people. And I don't think we talk about that enough. I think sometimes we see it just as it's a consumer product, it's a functional product that we put on to smell good. But actually, it's not. It's so much more than that. It brings happiness and joy.
No, of course. I mean, myself, I'm a bit too spoiled. because I've always had fragrances, free, not free. I bought them, but I felt like this is something very easy to have. I did not even think of it. And now, I mean, it's expensive, so it's not everybody that can have a real great fragrance. And I loved it, and I just did not really consider it, as being something so nice. Since I'm working in the business, and I got in touch with so many perfume lover, and we had discussion, and everybody has a story to tell with perfume, whether it's a memory, how it makes them feel, such a huge range of emotion. And La Fondation des Femmes, also, there are people with, you can help women going to the hairdresser. You can give lipstick or whatever to women, cosmetics, fragrances, and it really makes them feel better. To be honest, I really did not understand how much, but it does. That's incredible. And that's really nice to see, nice to understand, nice to receive those notes, people saying, thank you so much. When I put your fragrances, I feel better. But I mean, that's great. It's real happiness for me.
And so much of that is tied to one's dignity, isn't it? Around how we present ourselves to the world. So having the ability to be clean, well presented, smelling nice is something that it feels like it's a right to be able to do that. And it's a small thing. We could say it's a small thing, but actually it brings a lot to a person.
Yeah, it brings a lot. And it's not so easy for women in need. I mean, when you really are in those kind of situation, just to go enter a Sephora or whatever, because we're not talking even about niche, but just go there. They don't think they are not allowed, to do that. They feel like they are totally out of the world. So I was really happy to experience that it makes people happy.
I think that's a beautiful thing to be a part of. And I think a really clear part of this brand is it's just joyful. I think that's what I get from it. It's a joyful creativity. So it's been really lovely speaking to you and learning a little bit more about Roos and Roos and hearing about your background, and that you sometimes maybe have arguments with your mum, but not always.
No, not always. I mean, it's a normal family life.
Absolutely, as you would expect. Well, Alexandra, thank you so much for joining me. It's been a pleasure.
I thank you, Thomas. Thank you so much for having me.
Don't you just love creative people? I love how Alexandra has found two distinct creative outlets, both of which have such strong differences, but also similarities. Can we also, for a second, just acknowledge how damn cool she is? I was listening to one of her albums whilst working this week, and in the cloud of the Tears of Tiresias that I was wearing, I can confirm that the vibes were immaculate. If you want to know more about Roos and Roos, you can do so by visiting their website, roosandroos.fr. You can also follow them on Instagram at Roos and Roos. I'll put those details in the show notes for you. That's it for this week. I will be back again next week with another exciting new episode, so I will see you then. A massive thank you to Opium, our sponsor for this episode. If you know one single thing about me, you will know that I'm about making fragrance and fragrance discovery more accessible. And Opium's innovative AI solution, the Scent Sommelier, offers an entirely new way to explore fragrance by translating scent into language. And you can find out more at www.kaorium.com. That's KAORIUM.com. As usual, I will hand over to our guest to tell us the fragrance they have an emotional connection with. After all, fragrance is an emotional art form. If you want to follow me on Instagram, you can at Making Sense Make Sense. But for now, over to Alexandra, and I will see you next week.
So the fragrance I have an emotional collection with, first is Opium, because it has been launched when I was so young by my mom, and still it stays a fragrance that I do adore. Then I would say Carnal Flower from Dominique Ropion, as I'm a huge fan of tuberose. And I said to Dominique, you killed my will of doing a tuberose one day, because that's the best one. And I would stay on those two great fragrances.